Hello, my little sugar beasties. A little bit of a different setting you're seeing here today, and it's a no cake zone. So as many of you may well know by now, I haven't been doing cake tutorials for quite some time, having a bit of a hiatus. Don't know how long it's going to be, but we shall see. So what I thought I would do was chuck this video onto this channel for you to check out what I've been doing over on my other channel, and if you like it, pop on over to my other channel and subscribe. I'll pop a link in the description below of where you can find me. And this is just going to be a new thing I do for the time being until that sweet, sweet cake calls my name again. But I certainly know that when I used to make cakes, one of the things that I used to listen to or watch a lot was true crime. And quite frankly, I'm obsessed. So this is what I've decided to do. Anyway, this is the video. I hope you enjoy it. If you do, remember to pop on over and subscribe to my other channel. I'll look forward to seeing you there. Mwah! Who was Kelsey Berreth? Well, we're going to find out. Firstly, she was drop dead gorgeous. I just want to put that out there. Not that it matters, but she was. She was born in September of 1986, and she was raised by her mum, Cheryl, on a very remote farm in Washington. It was a hay farm in the Moses Lakes area, and she was raised with her brother, Clint, who was a couple of years older than her. So by all accounts, she had a very normal, happy childhood. She lived in a very religious family, and they were all pretty close. Kelsey loved the farm life. She was a farm girl through and through, but she had high hopes. That's a bit of a pun. Kelsey wanted to be a pilot. She wanted to be a pilot from a pretty young age, and by golly, this girl was going to do anything to get it. And she had the smarts, so she did. After going to pilot school, Kelsey actually became a flight instructor, clever cookie, at a flight school in Colorado. Now, this just wasn't a flight school for your average citizen. She used to teach US Air Force rookies how to fly, as well as international students, so it was a pretty big deal. So Kelsey had a great job, a great life, great family, but there was something missing. And I'm sure you can guess what it is. Kelsey wanted to get married and have a family. So because Kelsey was a busy lady, obviously, and like many people do these days, the easiest way for her to connect with somebody that she wanted to hook up with was through a dating app. So Kelsey got online, did a little profile for herself on a dating app called farmersonly.com. So she was a farm girl and she wanted to attract the same. She wanted a guy that had the same good morals and family values and, good old country farmer. That's what she wanted. So that's what she did. It wasn't very long before she swiped right to a guy called Patrick Frazees. So Patrick Frazees was a handsome cattle rancher. He had a ranch of his own that was 30 acres in a place called Florissant, Colorado, which was quite a ways from where Kelsey lived. Anyway, they hit it off straight away and she fell in love pretty much instantly. They continued a long-distance relationship for a while, and it wasn't too long before Kelsey decided to jump ship, get on a plane, fly over to Colorado and be with Patrick. And apparently it was a bit of a whirlwind. It wasn't long before they were engaged and Kelsey was pregnant. Now, Kelsey had her own condo in a place called Woodland Park in Colorado. And like I said, Patrick had his ranch in Florissant, I think it was called, in Colorado. But that was about an hour commute from one another. And even when Kelsey had their baby Kaylee in October of 2017, Patrick and Kelsey still live separately, which I find a little bit odd. But anyway, each to theirs. And apparently Patrick lived on the ranch with his mother. So mummy boy issues here, I don't know. It's also been said that Patrick's mum never liked Kelsey. So let's move ahead to November 2018, Thanksgiving Day, which I believe is November 22nd. Correct me if I'm wrong. Little Kaylee is 14 months old at this stage. Mum and Dad are still living separately. So Kelsey was very close to her mum, Cheryl, and who still lived in Washington, and spoke to her most days. So Thanksgiving Day was no exception. Kelsey and her mum, Cheryl, spoke that day, and apparently they just talked about, mother-daughter stuff, what Kaylee was getting for Christmas and what Kelsey was doing for Thanksgiving and all that sort of stuff, plans that they had for Christmas coming up. And Kelsey also asked her mother for a dip recipe, I believe, that she wanted to make for Patrick for Thanksgiving. All seemed well, all seemed normal, nothing strange. What was strange, however, is come December 2nd, just over a week later, Cheryl hadn't heard from Kelsey since Thanksgiving Day. And Cheryl knew this was not like her daughter. So because Cheryl was worried, she called up the Woodland Park Police in Colorado and asked them if they could pop around to her daughter's house to do a wellness check because things didn't feel right to her and she hadn't heard from her daughter in over a week, which was completely out of character. So officers were dispatched to Kelsey's home, and when they first got there, nothing really looked amiss, but they did notice that both of her cars were still in her driveway. Upon entering the home, everything looked pretty neat and tidy, but officers did notice a few, how'd you do things. Now, if you were going to be traveling or taking off somewhere, no doubt you'd be packing a suitcase, you'd be taking your makeup, all those bibs and bobs that we take when we travel, right? But no, Kelsey hadn't taken anything apparently but her phone. Things weren't looking quite kosher to the police. Like her toothbrushes were there, her iPad was there, her makeup was there, most of her clothes were there, no suitcases were taken. It was just a little bit odd. And like I said, her cars were still in the driveway. And this place is remote, right? You can't just boot it out somewhere. You have to Uber, or there's no train station or anything like that. So she couldn't have just jumped in a cab and taken off because it's in the middle of nowhere. So they knew that things weren't quite as they should be. So as police do when these situations arise, they started calling people closest to Kelsey that they thought may have seen her. And because of that, they, of course, spoke to Patrick Frazee. They asked Patrick when the last time was that he saw Kelsey, and he said it was actually on Thanksgiving Day, but the reason they saw each other is because they had broken up. He said that he'd met Kelsey in a parking lot to exchange their daughter because she was going to take off and go to family's house on the East Coast or something like that. He said that he gave her her apartment keys back. She went one way, he went the other, and that was that. That was the last time that he saw her. So the cops are like, this doesn't quite sound right because Mum told us that she was planning to spend Thanksgiving Day with Patrick. Now Patrick's saying, no, we broke up and went our separate ways. We weren't planning to spend the day together. So they're a little bit, this guy's on the nose. So the police did a little bit of digging and ended up finding some surveillance footage of Kelsey going into a local supermarket to pick up supplies for the Thanksgiving dinner that she was making for Patrick that day. Remember, she'd asked her mum for a recipe? Well, she'd go and get supplies. Now, in this footage, it shows Kelsey going into the supermarket with little Kaylee in the baby carrier, going and doing her shopping and coming back, and all seems fine. Now, that's the last actual ever footage we saw of Kelsey. However, there are some still images that were captured by Kelsey's neighbours at her condo. And in these images, we see Kelsey, Kaylee, and guess who? Patrick, all going into Kelsey's apartment at Woodland Park, Colorado on Thanksgiving Day. Hey, Patrick, thought you hadn't seen her that day at her apartment. What's a little bit more fishy is that the same day, Patrick leaves the apartment around about 4:30 with Kaylee and no Kelsey. So I can tell you something for free, this ain't looking good for Patrick. So at this point, Kelsey is a missing person. Now this story, as I said earlier, made national and international headlines. Like I said, 45 minutes up the road, 3 months earlier, there was another big case, which is probably why I don't remember seeing this case. But it was huge, which was great, of course, for publicity, getting Kelsey's name out there. It was a fantastic thing that happened, that it was so well publicised. Investigators held a press conference appealing for Kelsey's whereabouts, anybody that knew anything, and of course her mum Cheryl was there as part of that press conference. But there was one pretty obvious absentee. We picking up what I'm putting down right now? Patrick. Patrick wasn't there. The same applies for a candlelit vigil that Kelsey's mum and brother organised. Patrick was a no-show. Patrick, you're a dick. Now, while this investigation was going on, Cheryl had come from Washington to Colorado to stay at Kelsey's apartment to help with the search, etc., etc. And so had her brother Clint. Now, I don't know why police hadn't cordoned off the apartment as a crime scene or anything at this stage, because things are looking pretty iffy, but they hadn't. And what happened was that when Cheryl and Clint got to Kelsey's apartment, they noticed things were not right. The apartment was neat, it was clean, but the cleaning products had left smudges everywhere. There were, you know, when you clean like glass and it leaves streaks everywhere? Well, that was all over the television. Somebody had taken the cushions off the couch, flipped them over, cleaned them, and there was smears of cleaning product still on the back and just put them back. It just didn't look right to them. But what set them off was Clint actually noticed some blood on the outside of the toilet bowl, and that set the alarm bells ringing. Cheryl contacted police with this information, and they're like, right, it's time to come back over and take another look at this apartment. So police popped on over to Kelsey's apartment, as you do, and they checked out the bathroom and decided to do a luminol test on the bathroom. Now, for those of you who don't know what luminol is, I'm sure you all do, but it's like a substance that you spray into an area where there's no obvious blood to the naked eye. They spray it on surfaces, they put a blue light on top of those surfaces, and if there is human blood or blood present, it will light up like a Christmas tree. Well, there were Christmas carols playing in Kelsey's bathroom. Apparently, there was blood everywhere. And it wasn't just in the bathroom. Apparently, it was all over the apartment. It was on the walls, it was on the furniture, it was on the floor, it was on the ceiling. So it wasn't looking good. Detectives managed to get some DNA samples. Of course, they're in Kelsey's apartment, so it was pretty easy to do. So they got some DNA samples from Kelsey's bathroom using a hairbrush, toothbrush, mouthguard, and compared the blood that they found at the scene to Kelsey's DNA. What do you know? It was Kelsey's blood. So finally, the apartment's cordoned off. It is now a crime scene, and Kelsey's missing person case changes to a homicide investigation. Now, one of the first things that police generally look at when they're investigating a homicide is, number one, the people who have seen her last. And number two, that great little bit of technology that we all take for granted that listens to every single thing we say, our mobile phones. So police obtain the cell phone records of both Kelsey and suspicious little Patrick over here. And what they find is very, very interesting. So Patrick says he hadn't seen Kelsey on Thanksgiving Day, right? Well, police already know that that's bullshit. So what they also find with the cell phone records is that Kelsey and Patrick's phones are in the same spot on Thanksgiving Day. At about 4:30 on Thanksgiving Day, Kelsey's phone leaves her apartment along with Patrick's phone and travels to Patrick's place. I don't know how that happens if he went one way and she went the other. Patrick, like I said, you're a dick. Are we working out that Patrick's not overly intelligent right now? Asshole. So what happens now is Kelsey's phone leaves Colorado and travels to Utah. Okay? I'll insert a map so you can see where this phone's traveling. And the last text from Kelsey's phone was to Patrick on the 25th of November from Utah. The phone then travels from Utah to Gooding in Idaho, and that's when it goes dead. So now the cops are going to try to work out why the heck Kelsey's phone is all the way in Idaho. So when they're searching Patrick's phone, as you know, they're looking at Patrick's phone, they're looking at Kelsey's phone. So when they're looking at Patrick's records, they notice that there are quite a lot of calls made to an Idaho phone number. Surprise, surprise. So Kelsey's phone last pinged in Idaho, and now there is a phone number, an Idaho phone number, being called by Patrick over and over and over again. That's not suspicious, not at all. So police go ahead and call this Idaho number that Patrick is constantly calling. And who should pick up the phone at the other end? No, it wasn't Kelsey. Unfortunately, it wasn't Kelsey. It was a lady named Crystal Lee Kenny. Now let's get into her, shall we? Alrighty, so Crystal Lee Kenny. We all know there's no coincidences in things like this. The phone had last pinged in Idaho and there was the Idaho number. So the FBI give this number a call and Crystal Lee Kenny answers the phone And initially she says,
Patrick Frazee? Who's Patrick Frazee?
like she's not going to get caught. Then she changes her story to, all right, well, I know Patrick Frazee, but I haven't spoken to him for over a month. And the last time I spoke to him, I was just checking out buying a horse. Right. But the time that she was buying this horse was Thanksgiving weekend. She went and saw the horse, decided not to buy it, and went home. Okay. So based on the evidence that police have already gathered, they know that Crystal's clearly lying. So what they decide to do is take a little drive up to Idaho and go and see Crystal face to face. Detectives get to Idaho, knock on the door, hello Crystal, blah, 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 blah. Officers go in. She was quite happy for them to go in. And they all sit down for a little bit of a coffee and a chat. So Crystal can tell now that this shit's gotten real, right? So she sits down with the detectives and she says, look, I want to tell you the truth. I want to tell you everything I know. You know it's not going to end well when someone starts a conversation like, I'm going to tell you everything I know. It's not going to be good. But she did say that before she speaks to them about her side of the story, she wants to contact an attorney first. So, of course, she's lawyered up. They can't really speak to her anymore. So cops head on back down to Colorado, but they do subpoena Crystal's phone records at this point to be able to put a little bit more pressure on her. And what they find is that Crystal Lee was actually in Colorado the weekend she said she was, on Thanksgiving weekend, and hers and Kelsey's phones were together. Her and Kelsey's phones were together in Colorado. They then moved to Utah together, where that last text message from Kelsey was made. And finally, they ended up in Idaho. So on December 20th of 2018, police call Crystal again and haul her ass into the station to offer her a deal. And police have called this making a deal with the devil. But they said to her, she has one chance to come clean if she wants to take this deal. And she has to tell them everything, and she can't have actually been directly involved in the murder, or all bets would be off. So, here's Crystal's story. So Crystal Lee Kenny is a nurse that works in Idaho, and she's been described as being very friendly and kind and caring and loving and giving. And then this shit happens. I don't know what went wrong, but anyway. She'd known Patrick Frazee for a very long time. They dated when they were younger, on and off. And even though she'd moved on, gotten married, had a couple of kids, she'd always kept in contact with Patrick. Apparently, he had some sort of hold on her and she couldn't quite let it go. As a matter of fact, it's been said that she was very interested in getting back with Patrick. Girlfriend, getting back with an ex is like trying to put poop back up your butthole. They're exes for a reason. I'm speaking from experience. No. So apparently it was around August 2018 and her and Patrick got back in contact again as a mutual friend was unwell and they were organising, like get-togethers and stuff to see this friend. And yeah, these two ended up sparking stuff off again. And during this time, apparently Patrick was telling Crystal about Kelsey, specifically about what she was like as a mother. He was telling Crystal that Kelsey was an alcoholic, a drug addict, that she was violent, that she even threw an iron at her baby once, and that he was scared for his daughter's life. So he's making Kelsey out to be this awful monster of a human being that's hurting her children. Hang on a second. This reminds me of another little case. That case that I spoke about earlier that happened 45 minutes up the road from this case. I think a very similar thing happened early days during that investigation too. So what Frazee ended up doing was manipulating Crystal somehow. I do not know how. But apparently he asked Crystal not once, not twice, but 3 times to kill Kelsey. He used Kaylee as his catalyst and basically said to Crystal that if you don't kill Kelsey and she hurts my baby, it's on you. So what he's saying to this woman is if my daughter dies because I've asked you to do this, it's on your head. It's all your fault. And how this woman ended up going like, oh my God, okay, I'll do it. What? Some people I just will never understand. Okay, moving right along. So Crystal being a nurse, her first suggestion to Patrick was let's poison her. Let's poison Kelsey. Let's lace a drink or coffee or something with some Ambien and some Valium and put enough in there to make sure that it does the job. Patrick's like, yeah, right, good idea. Let's do that. So it's not clear if she actually put the drugs into the Starbucks caramel latte, which happened to be Kelsey's favourite drink, but she had a Starbucks caramel latte with her. So she went to Kelsey's condo and she saw Kelsey and she went up to her and she said to her, "Oh, thank you so much for putting my dogs back into my yard when they got out. I appreciate it so much." And Kelsey's turned around and looked at her like, "Pardon? I didn't." Of course, Crystal doesn't even live there. There were no dogs. It was the ruse. Anyway, so Crystal says to Kelsey, "Oh, well, anyway, I'm a new neighbour. Thanks anyway, it must have been somebody else. Here, I just happen to have a Starbucks caramel latte that I bought to you as a thank you gift." The ladies chat for a little while. They exchange numbers apparently and go their separate ways. Kelsey's a flight instructor. She's not stupid. Of course, she tipped that damn coffee out and never drank it. She didn't know where it was coming from, who this woman was. So that attempt failed. And Patrick was pissed. Apparently, he went right off at Crystal and said something to the effect of, "It's all right, you'll get another chance soon." This is a guy that this woman has been pining after and wants to be with all these years. Oh, beyond me. Anyway, so the next plan that Patrick had in mind was that Crystal was to head over to Kelsey's with a metal rod and hit her over the head with it till she was dead. Okay? Good plan. Anywho's, believe it or not, Crystal goes to Kelsey's house with the metal pipe, and while she's there, she realizes that she just can't do it. She goes back to Frazees' house, leaves the pipe at the front of his house, and takes off. Frazees' mum, who he lives with on the ranch, remember, finds this metal pole and says to Patrick, "What's this? What's this doing here?" Patrick realizes what's happened, that once again, Crystal hasn't gone through with the plan, calls her up, goes apeshit on her ass, and says it's just not good enough. Apparently, he says to her something like, "Why can't you just get this right? You know, like, go and do your own dirty work, dickhead. Really." And this woman, and the third time was only a week after the previous attempt. And this time, Crystal is to basically attempt the same thing, but with a baseball bat. Once again, Crystal goes down to Kelsey's condo, sits on the sidewalk with this bat, contemplating whether she's going to do this or not, and finally realizes that this is just not me. I can't do this. She goes back to Patrick Frazees' ranch, where she says to him, "I can't. It's not me. It's not in me. It's not going to happen. I just can't do it." Now, Patrick's on the ranch working. He gets all flustered and angry and pissed off with her once again and says, "Look, I've just got to go back to work. I've got the baby here to look after, blah, 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 blah." And even though he's just gone postal on her, Crystal still is nice enough to turn around and go, "Well, you go and do the work you've got to do. I'll look after the baby." Now, this is when Crystal starts opening her eyes a little bit. Crystal's a nurse. She's worked with abused children before. She knows what neglected children look like and how they act. She goes inside and looks at this baby that she's offered to look after. This sweet, gorgeous 14-month-old little girl looks the picture of health. She's happy, she's bouncy, she's bubbly, she's bright, not a bruise on her body, not even a little scratch. And it's at this time that Crystal thinks, "You lying prick. There is nothing wrong with this baby. That woman has not hurt this child. I know exactly what you're doing." Crystal's pissed enough that she confronts Patrick with this information and she's like, "Sayonara, sister," and off she goes. Because Patrick's little ego is hurt, he actually breaks contact with Crystal altogether for a good month. So this last incident that occurred, the incident where Crystal finally realised that Patrick was lying through his ass, was in mid to late October. So let's fast forward a month. Patrick has not spoken to Crystal to punish her for confronting him and not getting the job done. Crystal receives a call from out of the blue. So she's at home preparing her Thanksgiving dinner and planning whatever people do on Thanksgiving Day. Here in Australia, we don't have it, but I've heard it's a wonderful celebration. And Patrick calls her and says, "You got to get your ass down here to Colorado. You've got a mess to clean up." I mean, your heart would freaking sink. She knew exactly what he was talking about. However, she decides to lie to family and friends, make up some excuse about why she's got a nick off, and decides to head down to Colorado to clean up Patrick's mess. What is wrong with you, woman? I'm starting to think Crystal here's got some abandonment issues or something, because why you'd keep going back to that? Beyond me, don't know. I don't know. Not only does Crystal head down to Colorado, she makes sure that she stops and she gets gloves and garbage bags and like a whole suit to put on, like a hazmat suit, but you know, the cheapy disposable ones. And down she goes. Anyway, Crystal knew what she had to do and where she had to go. She rocks up to Kelsey's apartment, and when she opens that door, she cannot believe what she sees. There was blood all over the floor, all over the walls, over the ceiling, over the books, over Kaylee's toys. It was everywhere. It took her hours to clean up, and things that she couldn't clean, things like soft toys and anything that she couldn't get the blood out of, she would just put into garbage bags, tied it up, and put it in the truck. While she was doing this, Patrick was constantly calling her, telling her to make sure that she does a good job and that she's got to look for any teeth. Yeah, teeth. Patrick was scared that there may be some teeth laying around the place and that they needed to be found and picked up. And sure enough, apparently there were teeth found. So Crystal finishes cleaning everything up and she puts all the garbage in the back of the truck, closes up the house and takes off. And what she does next is she goes and gets some lunch for her, for Patrick, and for Kaylee. And they just go and have a nice family lunch together. This woman's a nurse. I don't want her looking after me. Jeez. Oh, and by the way, Crystal's telling this entire story to detectives at this stage. Now, Crystal's having lunch with Patrick and Kaylee, and at this point, Crystal doesn't actually know what had happened to Kelsey. So Patrick tells her. So on Thanksgiving Day, November 22nd, 2018, Patrick had gone to Kelsey's apartment and apparently they were going to be spending Thanksgiving together. And Patrick decided that he would do something a little bit romantic and set up a cute little game for him and Kelsey to play. So while Kaylee's in her playpen in the next room, Patrick decides to light some scented candles and put a blindfold on Kelsey's eyes. And he says to her what she has to do is go ahead and sniff the candles one by one and try to guess the scent of the candles. Now he's got her with this false sense of security. He puts the blindfold on her, and as she's smelling the candles, he grabs a baseball bat that he has with him and he smashes her across the head. And this is when apparently her teeth fly everywhere. Mind you, their baby's in the next room, remember? He continuously beat Kelsey with a bat, and at one point, apparently Kelsey looks up at him and says to him, "Please stop." But he doesn't. And he beats Kelsey with the baseball bat until she is lifeless. Then, once Kelsey was dead, Patrick picked her up and put her body into a plastic tote. Now, a plastic tote is basically just like a big plastic storage container. He puts her in the plastic tote and puts this tote in the back of his truck. So now he's told Crystal all of this information. It's time to get rid of Kelsey's body. Patrick drives to a fuel station with Crystal behind him and he fills up a fuel can. There is actually CCTV footage of him doing it, which is really quite chilling to watch, knowing full well what that fuel will be used for in just a couple of hours. They then drive back to Patrick's ranch where he has already prepared a burn pit and he places the tote and some other belongings of Kelsey into the burn pit, pours petrol over it and sets it alight. And then Crystal tells investigators that Patrick apparently took her remains and either put them into a landfill or into a body of water somewhere near his home. However, those remains were never found. He then put gravel on top of that burn pit to disguise that anything had happened there. But when the investigators were sifting through that gravel, they ended up finding a small piece of human tooth. They weren't able to get a full DNA profile off that tooth, so they never knew if it was Kelsey's, but you put one and one together, doesn't make three, does it? So then, once that was all done, Crystal says that Patrick told her to take Kelsey's phone with her. She took it to Kelsey's house first, where she texted Kelsey's mum, and in the text it just said, "I will call you later." She then took the phone with her from Colorado through to Idaho and finally ended in Utah. She then says that she destroyed the phone, and unfortunately Kelsey's phone was never found either. So once Crystal has told detectives this awful, gruesome, fucking sad story. They take her to Kelsey's apartment to do a walk through the crime scene.
Can you point to the area where you saw and clean blood up on the wall? And just hold it there so we get a picture of that. Okay, anywhere else?
It was the spray was from here all the way. I had to clean up underneath here, and it was all down here. And I know that I didn't get there. I don't know that I got some of this underneath here because I didn't move the chairs to get it.
Now, Crystal says that when she was cleaning up Kelsey's apartment, she deliberately left small sections of blood uncleaned. She says she did this so that if detectives did do a search, they would find that evidence and it would lead straight back to Patrick. I don't understand the logic. She was the one there cleaning it up, so she's going to be implicated too, but, you know, clearly she's not of sound mind anyway, right? So she showed police where all the blood was, the spots that she'd left behind, and everything was just legit and it checked out. So she got her deal. Crazy, I know, but she got her deal. I mean, they didn't really have that much of a choice. They had to find out what had happened, and this was the easiest, simplest, you know what I'm trying to say, right? Okay. Needless to say that Patrick Frazees was arrested the day after Crystal's interview. He was taken into custody at his ranch and he was charged with Kelsey's murder. So apparently this douche canoe was totally stoic the whole time and very cocky, but clearly he didn't think that he would ever get caught. He thought that he was smarter than everybody else around him. Nah. On October 28th of 2019, the trial begins. And even when Cheryl, Kelsey's mum, gets up and testifies and speaks about the last time she spoke to her daughter and the fact that she'd spoken to this killer of her beautiful daughter after the fact, this guy remained completely emotionless. Nothing. Lights out. Gone. But thankfully, Crystal's testimony, blood spatter evidence, and plenty of forensic evidence sealed the deal. Now, there was an explosive turn during this trial. Patrick, of course, had been in jail awaiting trial, and apparently he'd asked one of his cellmates to do a little bit of dirty work for him also. He likes getting other people to do his dirty work for him, clearly. So he'd given his cellmate notes with a list of people's names on it that he wanted gone before his trial so that he had a chance. And by gone, I mean dead. Now, who even are you? Included on this hit list was Kelsey's mum, Crystal's ex-husband, Crystal's children, the district attorney, and Crystal herself. Patrick had said that he wanted to see Crystal with a bullet through her head. Anyway, this inmate was smart, a lot smarter than Patrick, clearly. He kept these notes and showed it to the DA, and they were presented at trial. Now, one of the things that Crystal had said, which makes sense for her continuously helping this loser, was that she feared for her life and the life of her kids and other family members. She was scared that if she didn't do what she was told by Patrick, that she'd be next. She'd end up like Kelsey. And I guess when this evidence came out about the inmate having these notes and that Patrick had the hit list, her fears were probably justified. It doesn't make it right. I'm not saying it makes it right. She had plenty of times that she could have stopped this from happening, and she didn't. But I understand that the fear was probably real. Anyway, after a 3.5-hour deliberation, we know when they have those short deliberations and they come back with a verdict, what it's going to be, really. 9 times out of 10 anyway. Patrick Frazees was charged with murder, soliciting to commit murder, and tampering with a deceased body. He received life with no parole, plus 156 years. See you, Patrick. Bye, Patty. Bye. See ya. Sayonara. Bye-bye. And what was the motive for this awful, senseless, horrible crime? Well, it's been speculated that Kelsey wanted to end the relationship, and that Patrick, the messiah he was not going to give up parental rights, not even partially, to Kaylee. Apparently, Kaylee was his, and that's the way it was going to stay. So this beautiful young mother of this gorgeous girl who's intelligent, has her whole life ahead of her, is so promising, is taken away because of a narcissistic pig. I don't know how many times I have to say it. Just get a divorce. Afterwards, Crystal Lee Kenny did have to stand trial. She pled guilty of tampering with physical evidence and received, as part of the deal, 3 years in prison. Now, nobody was really happy about the sentencing. Nobody was happy about the time, but they probably wouldn't have been able to solve this case without her, and that's why they made the deal with the devil. But like I said, Crystal Lee Kenny, you could have saved this woman's life so many times. So many times. Just a shit show. A little update on Crystal Lee Kenny also, if you thought 3 years was something else, wait for this. In March of this year, 2021, Crystal Lee Kenny was released from prison. Her initial sentence had been overturned by the Colorado Appeals Court to an 18-month sentence. And based on the new sentence, Kenny had passed her mandatory release date and therefore was released. So she's out, walking the streets. I don't know for sure. I sure as shit hope she is not still nursing. There's no way. There's no way. And that, my friends, is the tragic, horrible, sad, awful case of Kelsey Berreth. How bloody awful and sad and horrible and wasteful is that? Just awful. And just a little how'd you do, little Kaylee is said to be living with Kelsey's family now. I'm sure that she's going to have a life filled with love and happiness, and that she'll be reminded all the time how amazing her mum was and how much of an asshole her father was. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It's just something that costs you nothing and helps a sister out. Be great. I mean, I'm building a channel from the bottom up once again, so I'd love your help. Also, if you would like to join me for more of this sort of malarkey on a reasonably regular basis, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you're informed every time I upload a new video. And that is it for me. I am out of here. I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Until I do, make sure you stay safe and look after one another. I'll catch you next time, guys. Bye.